Salut, and welcome to Social Isolation with me, Alex Ravenholm, the type of person who was so short growing up, he nearly drowned in a 4-foot canal. This podcast is a way for me to cope with the boredom and mental strain of being cooped inside for months on end, and hopefully provide some light entertainment for you, listening to people you don't know talk about things they love and are passionate about. Or, for Middlesbrough football fans out there, hear me rave about the club for a good 50 minutes. The idea behind the podcast is to reconnect with friends and talk about the things that you are passionate about and enjoy. You'll be happy to know that even though I have a PhD level knowledge of French garden sport bulls, there are no podcasts on the subject. Talking about the things that you love releases those sweet endorphins we're all craving. And so, if you take anything away from this podcast, it's to ring, text or FaceTime that friend you haven't spoken to in a long time and have a nice long natter. Over the following recordings, you will hear discussion on several topics, including acting, comedy, football, Pokemon, music and television. Feel free to listen on those that interest you, or just listen to them all, and maybe you'll develop an interest from the impassioned discussion. Disclaimer time, none of us are experts on any of these subjects, neither do we claim to have any success in these areas. These are just people talking about things that they enjoy. Finally, as you can hear, I am recording on this shitty little iPad, so apologies if the sound quality isn't quite that of some other podcasts. Today, I'm talking about the real best league in the world, and that is the Championship, the second tier of English football. I'll be joined by my brilliant friend Sam Nason, and we're going to talk all things Championship. A little bit beforehand, we're going to be focusing on recent years in the Championship, not the history of the competition, because it's quite hard to remember who was where. A lot of great Championship players moved at the Premier League and vice versa. So we're going to stick with probably around the last 5 years, but maybe go into more depth for Middlesbrough and Aston Villa. Why, you ask? Well, you'll soon find out. Sit back and enjoy. Final little bit from me, I like to set myself little challenges, and this week I'm going to try and convince Sam that the footballer Carlsberg exists. That's going to be my little challenge. I'll see how that goes. Last little thing, we might swear. Sorry if that offends you. Just skip over those bits and enjoy. Let's kick straight into things by me introducing my amazing guest. That was put very well, Alex. He is a follower of the Championship and an Aston Villa supporter. But despite that, he really is the sweetest and kindest person you could know. With a Jack Grealish tattoo on his forehead and a last name that sounds like a horse talking to its child, it's Mr. Sam Nason. Hello, Sam. How are you?
What an introduction. I'm very good, thank you. How you doing, mate?
I'm very well, yeah. I spend a lot of time on these introductions, as you can probably tell.
I can tell. That's one of the more unique kind of analysis of my last name, so I'm quite flattered by that. It's very nice.
I've got, obviously, Dan Horsley as well, so I feel like I might go down a similar avenue with that last name.
Field day with that one.
Lovely to see you, Sam. Well, actually, I can't see you, but that's beside the point.
It's vocal, isn't it?
Yeah, but I must say, I did catch a glimpse of you, Sam, and you're wearing your Aston Villa shirt, which is very interesting, because, like yourself, I'm wearing a Middlesbrough shirt, which is very formal, I would say.
What coincidence.
Yeah, and the reason why it's so formal is because this is a job interview, Sam. Boom. Yeah, that's right.
That's funny, because watching through your last 3 podcasts, you would have thought that I would have been able to anticipate the fact that it was a job interview, but I just haven't. It caught me off guard, man. Wow.
That's just how I roll. So, Sam, like every great interviewer, I don't know any that come to mind, but I'm going to start off my interview, as everyone does, and ask you, what job am I interviewing you for?
Well, surely being here in the lovely lush green meadows, I'm interviewing for the job of Swan.
Swan?
Yeah, Swan.
Oh, yeah. As in, are you interviewing to become a swan or play a swan?
I think to become a swan. It was quite a dream of mine when I was little, to become things when I was older that there was no feasible way I could ever become. And swan was definitely one of them, because like when I was going along the canals with my nan and stuff, we'd walk along the canals, and I always thought being a swan would be cool. It'd be awesome, because you could just honk at everyone, you could be fed copious amounts of bread, you wouldn't have to worry about anything, you could fly. Being a swan would be badass, man. There's nothing you could say that would change my mind on that.
I'll tell you what, you are correct, because swans do not have to worry about carbs.
Exactly.
They get straight through them.
That is crazy, man. Swans are ahead of us in every single way. We should all be Swans, really. That's what we should all aspire to be. So I'm very flattered to be at this job interview today for my dream position.
Well, as you know, a certain someone owns all the swans in the country, and I've actually been this person before. I am Her Royal Majesty, Her Royal Highness, that one. I am Queen Elizabeth II, so good luck, Sam, because, you know, I've got quite a high standard for my swans, and they really represent the country, so good luck.
HMS Swans.
Oh, sorry, Sam, just before we start, someone is coming in. Yeah, come on.
Oh.
Yeah, Sam, please for you to meet Henry Sam. This is Henry the Hermit. Henry the Hermit has now been hiding under a canal bridge for the past 72 years.
I've probably seen him there in my training as the Swan.
Yeah. He's the guy who looks at you and he's got that really puzzled look on his face about someone who doesn't know what the football league, the Championship is. Ooh. And that's because he's never heard of the Championship and he feels really shy. So Sam, as your first question, could you maybe tell poor Henry here what the Championship is?
Well, I tell you what, poor Henry there is missing out. The Championship is one of the most unique football leagues in the country, but also I would say in the world, because the Championship is absolutely crazy in the stakes that you have going forward for the entire thing. You've got the Premier League, right, where you're thinking, the top 6 clubs, they're generally going to do quite well. You've got your kind of outliers for relegation and things like that. The Championship, you have no idea what's going to happen. It is fast, dynamic football. Teams that you thought were bad can shoot up to the top. Teams that you thought were going to have a brilliant season can go on down to the bottom of the pack. Teams that you think are going to win can drop on down to the playoff places, and suddenly their hopes of getting into the Premier League are completely dashed. The Championship is just unadulterated drama constantly, and it is outstanding. It's brilliant, and I miss Villa being in that league because it was so much fun.
That was superb. That is such a well-articulated answer. Henry's happy. He's gone home to knit himself a Middlesbrough shirt. Cheers, Henry. I'll see you in a bit.
Oh, he's made a big mistake there.
It is interesting. We will get onto the podcast itself soon. But you mentioned a good point. Like, the Championship is so unique because there is no second-tier league like it. Arguably, the Premier League, in some regards, I'd argue possibly the Bundesliga. Obviously, you've got your bigger teams in there. But kind of on average, some of the average teams in the Bundesliga could easily fit into the Championship. And similarly, quite a few good Premier League teams would struggle more than they think.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree with that. And I think when you look at European football as well, you think about how different their style of playing is to ours. You have a look at how Guardiola lines his teams up or Klopp, and you when they clash in the Champions League, you really do see how different the leagues are, and not necessarily in terms of quality, but just in terms of play style. I think the Belgium league as well is one where you can identify it as, there are quite a few teams in this league who realistically could challenge for the top, and that's something that makes it exciting. That's something that makes the Championship exciting as well, because there is no, every year someone says, this is Leeds' year. This is Leeds' year where they're going to...
And it never is.
It never is. And that's one of my favourite things about the league as well. It's fantastic. But there's always that kind of anticipation that one team is going to do above everyone else, that one team is going to absolutely walk it. And it never quite ends up like that. I remember with this season in particular, I think I remember everyone saying that Fulham were kind of a shoo-in to go straight back up because they had a really, really good squad offensively. And I think they're sitting around the playoff places at the minute. But everyone thought, they were going to walk it and they were going to go straight up to the top. The other one I remember was Derby County as well, coming off the playoff final last season. Yeah. And then signing Wayne Rooney to use in the second half of the season. Everyone thought, they're making their last big push as well. And I don't think they've done anywhere near as well as they thought they did. I think they're mid-table at the minute. So it's quite interesting just to see how different things can go from one's expectation. That's what makes it so exciting.
And that is the best thing about the league. Yeah, Derby especially are now a mid-level club when they've been challenging every single year. And that's what's great about the league. Sunderland, a shoe-in Premier League team now in League One. The league is a strange place, and we're gonna kick off with it, I think, because I keep getting off topic. a couple of things before me and Sam start. On quite a few of the questions, they're going to be home and away questions, which means Sam is a very big Villa fan, I'm a very big Middlesbrough fan, and so we might be slightly biased. So to get around this, on questions where it's home and away, the home is a player from your own club who your answer is for, but then you've got to also name a player who isn't from your club to hopefully get a bit of everything. And secondly, it's going to be more specified in the last 5 years or so, Sam, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'd say so, particularly the last season as well.
Yeah, agreed. When Villa went up after that incredible change round of their season. But let's start off at the beginning, Sam. I want to know all about how much you love football. As a Swan in training, and every single Swan out there is asked the same question when it wants the job, and that is what is its earliest football memory.
Yeah, famously, Swans have incredibly good memories. All of these things just keep on coming back to them. I've got a bit of a confession here, Alex, because I absolutely love football. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, wasn't into it that much.
Really?
I really did not enjoy. Or rather, I did enjoy it, but I wasn't as devoted as I was now. Because I found a lot of, the individual player names and things like that quite intimidating, having to remember like all of these different things. I found it quite overwhelming when I was little.
Yeah.
I was born in the West Midlands. My brother, my dad, my grandparents, avid Villa fans, apart from my other grandparent who was an avid Wolves fan, but we won't get into that one. One of my earliest memories was when I was 4 years old, and we went up to Bodymore Heath, which is the Villa training ground. Mm-hmm. And my dad took me and my brother there to get all of the autographs of the players. Our 2004, 2005 lineup was pretty good. Like, we were getting autographs from players like Thomas Sorensen, Martin Lawson, Olaf Malberg, Gareth Barry.
He's been around a long time, hasn't he, Barry?
But Gareth Barry, honestly, he is someone who I think epitomises the Premier League for me. Because Gareth Barry has played, he's just always playing. He still hasn't even retired. He's playing for West Brom at the minute. But he's just always someone who I think of when I think of the Premier League, and he'll always be like a kind of talisman for Villa as well. Mm-hmm. But we went to Bodymore Heath. We got all of these autographs, and as I was getting them, I was kind of like, wow, this is really cool. All of these people are like people as well. And they're really, they had things to say, and they were off doing things. They were off training. We got to see them train a little bit, and it was just really, really exciting. So for me, that was something that kind of turned football from, me being at the ground and like being half interested in it, but going back to my Game Boy after a little bit and just like relaxing on that. That changed it into something where I was like, hang on a minute, I can get invested in these players. Now that I've seen them and I know their names, especially, like I'm really, really into this. So that's something that I always hold quite dear, because I always think of that as a kind of gateway for me to get into the Villa team. And what a Villa team it was as well, especially compared to how we've been doing in recent years. That team was fantastic.
Yeah.
So it was a real pleasure to be able to actually see them and meet a lot of the players. So that's something I'll always hold really, really dear.
That's sick, to be fair. Because it makes it real. Whereas before, it takes it away from the screen, and it's not just names on a piece of paper, it's real people. Mine's a similar one, and I regret this because I didn't know how good I had it, Sam.
Go on.
You might not know this, but back in the day, Middlesbrough were quite the force in Europe. We actually
what day are we talking there, Alex?
We got to the Europa League final, and we lost 3-0 to Seville. But earlier on in the competition, my dad took me to a group game, and I don't know the team's name, but that was the first football match I ever went to, and I slept through the whole thing.
You slept through the whole thing?
I slept through a Europa League match. That does not come around a lot of the time for Middlesbrough, okay? It'll never happen again.
It won't come around for quite a while either.
And so, and I remember it really well because my mum had wrapped me up in loads of layers because she said I was going to get really cold. And she'd made this marble cake that had more E numbers in it than 5 packets of Smarties. It was really... I don't know how I slept through it, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, Alex.
Yeah.
That's one of my I so badly want to see a European game at Villa Park, or go abroad and watch Villa play as well. Like we went to Leipzig this year for a friendly pre-season. But one of my dreams is being able to see Villa compete in, the Europa League or maybe even the Champions League. Let's see. But you're right. Like, those games are so special because they're just fantastic. They're just spectacles because it's not something you're used to seeing, and it's just incredible to think that your team is representing the country on an international level in that regard. It's just really fantastic to think of how far your team has come and the kind of influence they can have in the sphere of European football as well.
It's incredible. It's like when West Ham and Burnley secured just Europa qualifying places. That is so exciting for those type of clubs who really don't expect anything from a season apart from mediocrity, because they're mid-level clubs. Obviously West Ham and Burnley this season not having a good time of it at all. West Ham have had a lot of problems in the past, and we will get back to the Championship, but it's really interesting because these little glimpses of something special can mean so much. For me, it was the playoff final, and we lost it, and yet it was still one of the best days for me. You've seen a winning playoff final, haven't you?
I've seen a winning playoff final. I've seen a losing playoff final as well, because obviously not last season when we won, but the season before, it was Villa Fulham at Wembley as well. We were managed by Steve Bruce at the time. It was one of the most boring games I've seen because I think Fulham scored, I think it must have been like the half an hour mark or something like that. And we never, ever looked like we were going to score again. Like, we just looked like we were going to be defending a 1-0 loss. And when you're at a playoff final, that is such a silly, silly tactic.
Yeah.
So it looked like we were just going to defend the 1-0 and try and nick a goal and then take it to extra time or even penalties. Such is kind of Steve Bruce's manner of football when he was at Villa Park. But the contrast to that then is the winning playoff final that we were at last year, where we were against Derby County, where we were 2-0 up in the 70th minute. And that is, for a Villa side that at the beginning of the season was playing this kind of negative football where we were just defending constantly, just not really pushing and not really trying to be that spectacular offensively. To be 2-0 up with two spectacular goals as well was such a sight to behold. And it was just so nice to have that kind of positivity in the team and around the stands as well. And that, again, that's another moment that I'll hold really, really dear as well, was just winning that playoff final, because it was just absolute euphoria for everyone, for the manager who was a Villa fan, for Grealish who's a Villa fan and our captain, for my dad, my brother and me. Actually seeing us win something was really, really great. So, yeah, there's nothing like a playoff final in the context of a playoff final, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Do you remember when you lost to Fulham, who you beat in the playoff round before?
Yes, I do. Do you remember?
I do. I was at the game when, was it Jedinak scored a header, I think? And then
it was, yeah.
I think you won 1-0 over 2 legs, and I agree, it was rubbish football. I then came to Villa Park the season after, when you got promoted. You thrashed us 4-0 at home, and it was a different team. I agree with you, a different style of football.
Yeah, it was literally night and day. Like, there's two, and I think this is something that, I'd say for Pulis, Middlesbrough, was that he kind of set Middlesbrough up that way as well, in that it was a very, very defensive side, which Pulis is normally good at. But when you're playing against a very heavily offensive team, that can come back around to bite you, because if you can't defend against their strong offence, then you don't really have that much going forward that you can attack back with, if that makes sense. So yeah. I think that's kind of harkening back to, like, I saw shades of that with Steve Bruce at Villa Park, and that reminded me of how Pulis played when he came to Villa Park with your Middlesbrough as well.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. You do end up getting in the Championship two very polarising setups, whereas you get a bit more nuance in the Premier League, but you get the staunchly defensive and the all-out attack.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It makes interesting football, apart from when you get two staunchly defences playing each other.
Yeah, because what do you do then? There was my sister of all people came up with the best analogy for that situation. Doesn't care for football at all, but basically there's, and I know you'll appreciate this, there's a Pokemon episode very, very early on in the anime where there's a fight between Ash and a bug trainer, and there are two metapods that are against each other, and they just keep using the move Harden, and nothing happens, and they just get more and more defensive, and nothing happens. And he was like, that's kind of like how when Villa play, isn't it? Like when we were managed by Steve Bruce, and I was like, yeah, but I mean, you're not wrong. Go for it.
You listen to that and you write it down in your little pen and paper. Like, that is a very good analysis of what's going on.
I'll keep that for a rainy day.
Just while we were talking about the playoff finals, I'm in a very privileged position to have Sam, because Aston Villa are a team who not only have lost a playoff final, they've also lost an FA Cup final. Or was it? Sorry, was it the Carabao Cup? Sorry.
Well, yeah, we lost the Carabao Cup most recently, but I mean, we lost the FA Cup it was against Arsenal. I think it was 2015. I want to say.
Did you go to the game?
I didn't go to the game because it's a lot more difficult to get tickets for an FA Cup final than it is for a League Cup final.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the FA Cup final ones are like bought by businesses as well, which makes it difficult to actually get into the ground. Especially because I was 2015. I must have been in year 11. I wouldn't have been going to games that regularly because of like schoolwork and things like that. So I wouldn't have had the kind of ticket history to back me up to get a ticket at the FA Cup final. I remember watching it. I remember us losing 4-0, but we did manage to get a ticket to the Carabao Cup final, which was I think now that was the last live football game I've seen because of obviously all of the lockdown. But I think that's the last game I saw.
I couldn't even name mine. I think I went to see Borough early January before I went back to uni, and I can't remember the game though. You're, as I say, you've seen both ends then. For you, what hurt more? Not gaining promotion to the Premier League or losing the FA Cup final?
I think you've got to look at circumstance in this, especially because when we lost to Fulham in that playoff final, it looked so dire for the club. We were minutes away from going into administration, because our owner was not injecting any money into the club. We had so many debts. We had such a high player wage budget as well that we had to compensate for. And also, Grealish looked like he was going to move on. It looked like we were going to lose a lot of our best players, especially, obviously, Grealish. So it looked like we were going to have to sell him for pennies. I remember, I think before we were kind of bought out, Tottenham came in with an offer for Grealish that was, I think, £2 or £3 million plus Josh Onomar. And when you think about how good Grealish is now, or even how good he was in the Championship, and you think of that being seen as a fair offer for him, it was absolutely absurd. So I think the circumstances of that particular playoff final defeat were really intimidating. They were really, really scary. Whereas with the cup final, the League Cup final, it would have been great to win the League Cup, but I have always thought that this season in particular, our only goal should be staying up. It's the most vital thing as a Premier League team. What's the thing you want to do the most? Play in the Premier League next season. So I think that while losing the League Cup really hurt, I went to the League Cup game not expecting us to win and just expecting to have a nice time. I think a lot of Villa fans kind of had that mindset as well, which was nice because it meant that it didn't get very toxic in the stands.
Yeah.
And the entire game, I don't know whether you watched it on the telly, you might not have done, but the most important thing for me was that we outsung the City fans tenfold. We were such a loud fan base. We were there for our team. We wanted to cheer them on any way possible. And we were all having a good time. It was sad to lose, of course, but it was a lot less inconsequential than the playoff final was, I think. So in this particular circumstance, when you're looking at it from, a contextual point of view, I think the playoff final hurt a lot more because it thrust us into so much uncertainty that, very, very luckily we have managed to come out from stronger. Well, I mean, debatably, but no, we definitely have, absolutely have, because there's so much money we have available now that we didn't before, but we were able to come out of that so much stronger. We were obviously able to get promoted the next season. But that prospect in the summer of nearly going into administration, nearly having to sell Grealish. I mean, Terry went as well. Obviously, John Terry went, who was a big force in our defence. That prospect was quite scary, being cast into those waters where we were like, oh Christ, I don't know what's going to happen. And like you mentioned before with Sunderland, where they went straight down to League One, that could have very easily happened to Villa if we weren't able to make the signings we did the next season, weren't able to get the new ownership. It very easily could have happened. And that's a really scary prospect when that a football club means so much to you, I think. So I'd probably say the playoff final. Sorry, that was a massive ramble.
No, it's a fair point, because I think something that plays into it is the dying of the cup. I don't think people care about the cup anymore. It's basically a place for Man City, Manchester United, Liverpool's second teams to have a run out. And then when they get to the final, it's to cover their asses if they're not doing well in the league. That's what the cup is now. It's a publicity thing to take away for the big clubs. And you don't really see the fairy tale stories of Wigan, for instance, anymore coming through.
Or like Swansea or the teams like that were able to get to that cup. The one thing I remember was, I think it was the 2011-2012 season, which was where Blues won the League Cup. And then they ended up getting relegated, so they were playing European football while they were in the Championship.
Yeah,
which is just bizarre. It's absolutely crazy. But it's the cup is for I think the cup is for top six teams something completely different to what it is for lower league teams. For lower league teams, even like mid-table, lower table teams in the Premier League, for them it's a real shot at winning some silverware, at getting a really good cup run going, which can increase confidence in the league. I know it did for Villa for a little bit while we were having our League Cup run this season. But it's something really special for a team where, they're not going to get that chance to maybe get promoted, or they're not going to get that chance to end up in the top six and go into European football. But this is something that feasibly, if everything falls the right way, they could win. And that's where the phrase, the magic of the cup comes from.
Yeah.
You think about how there can be these kind of miraculous, magical circumstances. And I think you're right in that it's a lot more difficult to see that nowadays. I think it was at the beginning of the season where there was this really bizarre time on Sky Sports where Jose Mourinho was a pundit on there, which is crazy. But it was the beginning of this season, and I think Mourinho was asked, who do you think feasibly could win the Premier League this season? And he said 4 teams. He said Manchester City, Liverpool, Tottenham, and Manchester City's B team.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, Manchester City do have a good B team. And that's the team they put out for cups. And, when they're going against teams like Oxford United, for example, or Burton Albion, there's no way they're going to beat those teams. And
even with their second team, it's just ridiculous levels.
Yeah, exactly. It's great for those clubs to have the kind of like TV exposure and the and the money that comes with having big clubs at their venues. Like, when I'm playing FIFA and I get drawn to Manchester City in the cup, I'm like, that's great, because that's lifting me out of the debt that I've created for my objectives. Like, that's fantastic. But it's good for that sake. But I think you're right when you say the cups are, you know who's going to dominate the cups.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. When we went to the final this year, I said we weren't expecting to win. But there was always that, there was always that hope. There was always that thing of like, well, can we? What if we do? And it was quite exciting.
Yeah.
But we never were. I think you're right when you say that it's kind of, not necessarily tailored, but those top 6 teams are always going to run rampant in the cup. And sometimes you do get those kind of upsets, especially like when Liverpool got out of the cup, for example, and then they ended up getting out of Champions League, and then they ended up losing their unbeaten Premier League streak, which is crazy.
All in a few days, yeah.
All in a few days, yeah. But I mean, you look at the teams that have won the FA Cup, that have won the Carabao Cup recently, especially like Manchester City, and you think like you've kind of got a predetermined idea of how a campaign for one of those cups is going to go.
Yeah, I agree with you a lot, and I just want to say a little thing in case anyone's listening to this 3 or 4 years in the future, which they won't be. But the reason we don't mention Newcastle is this is just before the money's come in. So when they're world champions of the world because of the money they've got, that's because we're not mentioning them because they're not quite there yet. But I'm sure they will be in about 6 months.
Yeah, it's like, just to go off on a little tangent. It's crazy I've been seeing so many posts on Twitter and Instagram of like because I haven't been very well versed on the actual takeover. Like I haven't been treating it with kind of the seriousness it might deserve now, because you always hear like that Mike Ashley's putting the club up for sale, that he's talking to investors, and like no one ever really steps forward. But I saw on Twitter that apparently if this deal were to go through, Newcastle would be richer than the top 10 other richest Premier League clubs combined, which is an absurd amount of money. And then I was on Instagram and I was saying, like those player mock-ups where you have like a player's head and like they're in a different kit. So like there's loads of like Grealish and Man United, because Man United love Grealish. But there were ones with like Mbappe in Newcastle in a Newcastle kit, and I was like, wow, that's Mbappe in a Newcastle kit. That's not going to happen, but I mean, it could.
It really could now, because it's the money they've got is scary big. Because you have a go at Man City for the money they've got, and how it's not real, because they weren't a very good club. Suddenly they are, because it's just the money. There's nothing within the club. The money Newcastle have it scares me as a Middlesbrough fan as well. I don't think we'll be able to get that rivalry going for a while.
It's that issue of people always say like, they've bought the league or they're buying the cup or things like that. It's that issue of once you have that absurd amount of money at your disposal, nothing can catch up with you apart from more absurd amounts of money. And I think that's kind of what's you can notice that pattern in like the transfer market, for example, and how ridiculous a lot of the prices have become for players in the transfer market, because there's just this inflation of, you've bought a really expensive defender, my defender's going to be better, so I'm going to pay more for him than you bought for yours, and suddenly it just keeps creeping up and up and up, and it becomes quite unsustainable. I haven't been looking too much into it because of, it doesn't really affect Villa as a team, but the thing with the Manchester City like European ban as well this year could easily happen to teams like PSG, for example, and it doesn't. So I think that something needs to be done to combat that sense of money kind of buying the game, because it does just make it quite, it kind of kills the passion of it a little bit. It's like with financial fair play in the Championship. Getting back to the Championship, here we go. It's like financial fair play in the Championship, because it's a rule that in theory is meant to prevent bigger clubs using more money in order to, buy the league. But in theory, that's what's meant to happen. But in practice, it punishes the clubs who don't have the money to finance a lot of stuff, and it gives it's like with Bolton Wanderers, for example, like it gives them more and more point deductions until they're kind of just stripped down, and that's quite sad. I think it needs to be done more to standardise a sense of money and finance in the football league in general.
There are two clubs I want to bring up to demonstrate your point. Firstly, Wolves, when they got in Nuno Espirito, who's Espirito? I don't know. Who is a fantastic manager. I hate his guts because he celebrated them beating us in the league, and I've never been angry in my life. But they went from your very mid-level Championship team to competing for the top 6 now. They're a top 8 club.
Consistently as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that season, we were the team who you mentioned right at the start, the team who are a shoo-in to win the league. And we lost our first game of the season to Wolves 1-0, and I was like, hang on, something's not right. And so, yeah, it's amazing what impact and what money can do to a club to completely turn it round. Because, yeah, is that fair? I mean, it's great for the club, but is there any way of standardising it, really, when you're looking at Newcastle with 260 billion? It's very hard to do.
That's the difficult thing, and I think, because the other thing I'll bring it back to is for the Championship is teams like Norwich or Sheffield United, for example, who I remember the Premier League game this season when Norwich beat Manchester City, and it wasn't very good for Villa because this put us down in the relegation spots, but I was rooting for Norwich in that game because they were the underdogs. Like, you do root for them, and I saw a tweet later that said, I think it was that Farke's entire squad was, like, in theory, worth less than even a few, like maybe even one of Guardiola's players. And it's that sense of, money can buy everything. It can buy really, really good players, but it can't buy like team spirit, if that makes sense. I think Wolves do have that in abundance still. I think they do have the finance to back them up, but they also set up really well. They've really kind of come out of their shells to become. I'm not going to say the biggest team in the West Midlands because that's a lie, but they've come out as a really influential force of football. And like we were talking about before, they constantly are challenging the top 16. They did the double over Manchester City this season. I think they were only one of the maybe like 6 clubs to do that or something.
A certain someone scored a brace against them. I think his name's Adama Traore, maybe. I'm not sure.
I think his name is Adams Traore.
Middlesbrough legend.
That was one of my favourite memories at uni. Was just you typing in. It was a Jack Grealish post, wasn't it? And you typed in, "I love Jack Grealish, but Adams Traore is better." And you just got loads of messages afterwards. Just go, "Shut me, tit."
Yeah, I got loads of hate for it, but Adams Traore / Adama Traore is way better than Grealish. On that note, though, both very skillful players, home and away. So I'll give you one of your Villa players. But who would you say is the most skillful player you've ever seen or you've known in the Championship?
I would probably, I'm going to be biased. I'd have to say Grealish.
Yeah.
I think Grealish is just absolutely fantastic whenever he plays. It's been an absolute pleasure to see him play for this Villa side. The things he can do to a team's defence, the length he can kind of go with the ball, and just his confidence on it as well, I think is one of the main positive points about his football. He plays such positive football, and his confidence on the ball really reflects that. He's able to draw out defenders. He's able to get into very advantageous positions. One of my favourite goals that Villa scored last season was against Rotherham, where he had this amazing link-up play with one of our defenders, El Mohammadi, who came really, really far up the pitch. But he was on the ball, I think, for probably about like 10, 15 seconds because he was just able to consistently dribble it. And that's a mark of a really skillful player. I think he's absolutely insane, and regrettably, I don't think he's going to stay at Villa at the end of the season. He's in a way too good to play for Villa now, and I am grateful for all of the time he's put with the team. He's Villa through and through. I think he's probably the most skillful player I've seen in the Championship, home at least.
Yeah. Away? If you have one?
I might need some time to think about this. So, what's your home one?
That's all right, because I've got 3. Firstly, home, Adama Traore. I mean, let's be fair. He's finally... I've called Adama Traore's rise to power for the past 2 years. And he's finally getting the recognition he deserves.
You love him.
I do, but if you look at him now, people are finally admitting to what I've been saying for the past 2 years. I'm not saying I was before the trend, but I was. He's finally getting a lot of recognition. He also is one of those players who develops greater than any player I've ever seen. Like, he comes to a club and he listens and he works and he's dedicated to getting as much out of his game as he can because he's got so much raw potential. He just needs to get it out.
Definitely.
And I think Pulis did amazing with him. I think Nuno's doing amazing things with him. And I just love to watch him get better. But I do mean in the Championship, people forget he contributed to 15 goals the season he was playing for Middlesbrough. And a lot of that time he wasn't starting games. Before he went to Wolves, he got 10 assists, 5 goals.
Wasn't he?
He was. And people forget just how good he was. And so even though now he's a lot better, I would still call him when he was there. But for away from home, I've got 3 for different reasons. Firstly, Matic Vidra, about 2 seasons ago when he got top goal scorer. He's now at Burnley, I think.
Yeah,
which
he is, yeah.
I don't think really is the club for him because of the way he plays. But as an out-and-out striker, he's phenomenal. And he did score a hat-trick against us when we lost 3-0 to Derby. And in that one performance, I was blown away. Next up, Harry Wilson.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Technically most skillful. I watched him. I actually went to a Derby game with my friend from university, and it was amazing to watch him play because he's just so good on the ball. He does so little but so much. Honestly, every time he touches the ball, it does something amazing. And finally, I think it's got to be Ryan Sessegnon, who last season was one of the most phenomenal players you could ever watch. And I have seen him play for Tottenham as well.
Yeah.
He's obviously just come back from injury, so he's a bit shaky. But when he was in the Championship, I've never seen a player like him. So yeah, they're my three. I'd probably go for Vidra overall, just because that season he was absolutely phenomenal. Have you thought of any? Maybe one of the ones I mentioned.
I've thought of two now that I've had a think. In terms of Fulham, like I would have said Sessegnon as well, because he was probably like the Grealish for them. Like he was their star player, and I know they've got another Sessegnon in it as well, but he was easily one of the most influential players in that side.
Yeah.
For me, I'd probably bring up two. The first one I'd bring up was James Maddison when he played for Norwich from 16 to 18. Obviously, he's in the Leicester City side now, but that was the first time when you could really see the potential for Maddison. He's kind of a similar player to Grealish. He gets into really advantageous positions. He's brilliant going forward. He's got so much confidence with the ball at his feet as well. And when Farke did come in the 17-18 season, that was when he started making regular appearances in the team. And I remember that being quite an underwhelming season for Norwich as well. So for him to make that kind of impact on that squad was kind of like what Grealish is doing to the Villa team now, where he's a star player in a kind of mediocre side. So I think Maddison really, really shone there, and that's why I think he's a really good player in the Championship, and why he deserved to be in amongst Leicester City now as well. The other one I would say would be who was it? Alexander Mitrovic.
Oh, I was going to mention him. Yeah,
he's absolutely clinical in front of goal. He's absolutely insane. I would have put him in, because we've done Championship 11s. I would have put him in mind that he wasn't actually in the Championship last season, because obviously he was in the Premier League. But he is absolutely clinical in front of goal. He gets into such good positions. He is ruthless. He's very, very fast, and he was linked with Villa for a while. Like, we thought that maybe he could be the fix to our striker worries, but Mitrovic is absolutely insane. I think he's really, really skillful, and he was very threatening as well. Really, really scary to have in front of goal, because you just knew that when the ball came to his feet, he was going to do something special with it. So I think that Mitrovic is probably another one that I would say was a standout talent in the Championship as well. And I mean, he's doing brilliantly this season too. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, the thing with Mitrovic is he's one of those players you see on a team sheet and you do shit yourself as a fan of your team. You mentioned the 11s. I say we just jump straight into them, because they're quite in-depth, obviously, and I do want to hear as much as possible on these. Yeah. So, a couple of rules for these. It's a championship 11 of all time. As I say, most likely they're going to be from more recent years. And you are allowed 4 players from your own team throughout the squad.
Yeah.
So, firstly, what formation? And then jump straight into your team, Sam.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm playing 4-3-3, absolutely classic. I feel like it's the best formation to get the ball forward. It keeps you strong in every single position on the field as well. Goalkeeper, I think you'll be happy with this one. I've gone with Darren Randolph. I don't know whether you'll be happy with it now, because obviously he's not at Middlesbrough anymore. I
am very happy, because I put Keeper of the Season 2018.
There we go, fantastic. I think he was second last season only to Dean Henderson. But I didn't want to say Henderson, because Henderson, Man United, and also Sheffield United, who are now in the Premier League. Darren Randolph, I did think, did absolutely brilliantly for his defence. I think he's a great leader as well. And I think that he is a very, very overlooked keeper because of where Middlesbrough finished last season. I think he's a really, really crucial part of your defence in such a defensive side as well, because that was one of the hallmarks of your football last year. I think he did really, really well in that regard. Am I just going straight onto mine, or are you?
Well, no, I'll just mention quickly. Yeah, we'll do like goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, striker, but like each. Okay. So I've gone for Darren Randolph as well. More so for this season, because he did win Championship Keeper of the Season for last year, but he was this season. We've completely upturned our team. And we are rubbish in defence. We concede so many goals, which I'm okay with, because we've got rid of our whole of our background staff. We've completely rooted the club. And obviously you're going to have a bit of backlash with that. We're not going to do amazing this season, but we can build on it. But where we've let ourselves down defensively, he's been so much better, even this season. And I know he left in January, which was a huge shame. But some of the things he did, I couldn't fault. And some of the saves he pulled off just blew me away. Yeah. So I've gone for Randolph as well. Your defenders, please, Sam.
Yeah, so I've got four at the back. On left back, I've gone with Ben Stevens from Sheffield United. I was umming and erring about putting Jamal Lewis in there from Norwich, but I think Ender Stevens is probably more significant because of where he's come from and his age as well. He actually used to be a Villa player. I think it was the early 2010s, like 2012 to 2015, I think he was. But he came into this Sheffield United side last season from Portsmouth in League One, and he had no problem adapting to Wilder's coaching and methods on the pitch. He was brilliantly offensively and defensively, which obviously Wilder needs in his wing-back formations. But that is such an intense role when you think about it, and he slipped into it so perfectly, and he's done really well in the Premier League.
We tried to buy him, Middlesbrough.
When did you try
that? When he went to Norwich. So it was between us and Norwich, and at the time everyone was kind of like, well, Middlesbrough the bigger club, and then but obviously Norwich had the amazing season where they just kind of snuck up out of nowhere. So yeah, interesting little tidbit. Who's next?
Obviously I've got two centre backs. First one, probably a little bit biased. I've gone with Tyrone Mings. I was umming and erring about whether to, because the other one isn't biased at all. Like, the other one is genuinely a great player from last season. I was umming and erring to put Liam Cooper in this position from Leeds, because he did really, really well last season as well. But Mings was crucial to Villa's season in 18-19, and that goes without saying. He is such a natural leader. He brought strength to the back when we didn't have it. He's brilliant just communicating with players, and he's really skillful as well. The amount of goal line clearances or the amount of close calls that we've had, and Mings has been there to save them. And a lot of people sometimes say that he does have quite a disaster at the back. I think he is much, he has far more positive performances at the back than negatives. And I think Mings' leadership qualities is something that was really, really vital at Villa come the winter. And I was so glad that we were able to sign him permanently from Bournemouth. Whether or not he will stay this season, I really hope he does.
Yeah.
But I mean, now he's gone on leaps and bounds. He's an England international player now. He's such a great ambassador for the club as well. But also, he's just a really amazing, genuine person. And he does a lot of work in Birmingham as well with his academy too. If Grealish wasn't the captain, it would easily be Mings. He is an incredibly influential player on the Villa side, and I was really, really happy to sign him permanently from Bournemouth. So he's in my first centre-back role. The second centre-back role I've filled with Jack O'Connell from Sheffield United. Yeah. One of the things about Wilder's defence is just they're so good with the ball at their feet. They're so confident with it, and I suppose that's what you need for his kind of formations. He actually epitomised play out the back football. He was so comfortable with the ball at his feet and getting it forward, and he was a really good contributor to a lot of the goals and assists that came for Sheffield United in that season as well. So to have that kind of ability as a centre-back is really quite astounding too. And then for my right-back role, I've gone with Max Aarons from Norwich, who was amazing defensively. He was great going forward. And he is a young prospect as well who will just keep continuing to grow.
He's like a championship Trent Alexander-Arnold.
No, I'd agree with that, yeah. And there was something I thought recently was just that there are so many great English right-backs. Yeah. Like, we're just a country of right-backs. There are just so many good ones. But he had a brilliant season with Norwich. He continues to have it now. They're at the bottom of the table, but he's doing very, very well in that side. Yeah. He's just someone who is great defensively, amazing offensively as well. And when you're looking for a fullback, that is, nowadays in this evolving game, that's crucial.
Yeah, agree with you 100%. I think also, it's funny you say about the England right backs, and that's because the English represent that footballer who joins a club when he's about 11 years old, and he's not quite good enough to be a winger, he's not quite good enough to be a defender, so we put him in right back. And that was me growing up, left back though, because I was quite good with both feet. But yeah, so that's good old England, eh?
You'll be in my championship top 11 in 10 years' time, Alex.
Just you wait, George Friend, eat your heart out. For me, I've had to move someone around a little bit who doesn't normally play there, but I'm sure he won't mind. Left back Ryan Sessegnon, just a phenomenal player, and I just can't get over how young he was when he was at, not his prime, but when he was really doing what he was doing. At 16, he was absolutely destroying everything. 16-year-old Tottenham are offering 15, 16 million for you. It's something pretty incredible.
And he's shown it as well. He's backed it up constantly on the pitch.
Yeah. Because he's one of these players where I first heard of because of the money around him, but then I went on to watch him that season and he proved himself. Next up, I've gone for Joe Bryan, but for when he was at Bristol City.
Fair enough.
And that's because Bristol City had a fantastic run about 2 or 3 seasons ago, and they dropped off. They did a Leeds, so they had an amazing first half of the season and dropped off quite badly. But there were players in that team who I kind of fell in love with. They kind of became my second team, and it was only just because I ended up watching their progress a lot. And for me, it was Joe Bryan at right back. Left back was phenomenal, but he's playing right back for me. Aidan Flint, who then came to us and was shit. He was so good at Bristol, and then he really didn't prove himself for us.
It's always the way, isn't it? Always the way.
It's so frustrating. And then Bobby Reid, who I think is now at Fulham. Joe Bryan, he was really phenomenal for them. I remember they beat us 2-1 at home at the start of the season. We beat him second time, and I loved the team. They had a real good mentality about them, and they were really homegrown as well. Joe Bryan was at Bristol City for a very long time before he really made the team, which I really appreciate. My centre backs, I've gone for. You'll be happy with this, John Terry.
Very not. I've completely forgot about John Terry. How did I not put John Terry in the team?
Well, to be fair, I was quite surprised when you didn't say him. I was like, oh, are you playing him up front?
I tell you what, then he'd probably be where Mings was, but in the long-term impact, I think I'll keep Mings in my team. But definitely John Terry.
Yeah, and then I've gone for Ben Gibson because you can say what you want, and he's absolutely gone off the pot now. But he was the best defender in the Championship for about 3 years. And I will fight anyone who disagrees. I'm talking before we got promoted, so that's like... His best run about 2013, 2015. He was just phenomenal. And he's also... I'll ask you this question as well before you go on to your midfielders. He's my captain for my team, Gibson. Do you have a captain already, or are you coming on to your captain?
I tell you what, I'll probably give Mings the captaincy at the moment. Because, I mean, you can probably predict who I've got in, at least one of the players I've got in my centre midfield.
Yeah.
After recent events, I think I will give Mings the captaincy.
Oh, brilliant. Go straight on to your midfielders if you want.
Alright, so, like I said, 4-3-3, so I've got 3 midfielders. On the left, I'm having Pablo Hernandez from Leeds.
Oh.
I didn't even realise this until I looked it up. He's 34.
Yeah, he's getting on.
Old. I didn't know that at all, but he's last season he got 12 goals, 12 assists. He keeps doing well consistently this season as well. He was at Leeds for quite a while, and he's found his footing with Bielsa.
Yeah,
he's a really, really good player who plays well in Bielsa's system. He's always in the right place. His link-up play is really, really good, and he's I'm going to use this word a lot when I'm talking about my midfield, but he's a very creative player. He's someone who is able to influence where the ball is going and create these kind of pieces where you can get the ball into the net. And he's a role model as well for the rest of the Leeds squad. Being, old, I say old, he's 34, he's not old, but being an older player on the field, he's able to kind of command the game and allow people to, learn, which is another important part of football. So him being a role model for that Leeds squad, especially because a lot of them are quite young now under Bielsa, I think is quite important. My other centre midfield role, Jack Grealish.
Of course.
Needs no introduction. He is so creative in that role. Dean Smith plays him on the left wing more regularly in the Villa side that are in the Premier League, but I think he plays best in the centre midfield role, and that's also his favourite role to play as well. So naturally, I think he's better suited there. The way he can move the ball, the way he can dribble it, all comes down that centre, and then that means you can either go to the left or the right to create chance. With Grealish on the left wing means that all of our attacks suddenly come down the left wing, and then it becomes quite predictable. So I'm going to stick him in the centre mid role, and he's going to do fantastically there. In the right centre mid role, who is my last Villa player, I promise, is John McGinn. John McGinn, an absolute cracking signing for Villa last season. We got him cheap as anything. I think it was probably about like £2 million we paid for him from Hibs in the Scottish League. But he has been absolutely phenomenal for us the entire time he's played. because he is just someone who is capable of leading the midfield. He's someone who is, a real favourite with the fans as well. And he's so creative. He's so good with the ball, and he can make those long shots. He can make those short passes. He's fast as anything. He scored He scored this one goal pre-season that I will always remember vividly, where he literally just went all the way to the opposition's corner flag and just from there dribbled it into the goal, past the goalkeeper, past two defenders, into the goal. And it was just amazing that he's able to do that. John McGinn makes my right centre mid spot. I think he's fantastic.
That's the thing, John McGinn, what a player you don't talk about. You really don't talk about, but he's one of those underlying workhorses, similar to a Johnny Howson, who isn't in my team, but who just does the job of three players, really, and just keeps them ticking over.
I think especially, this last I'll say on him, but especially with Villa's form in the Premier League at the minute, he's been injured for the majority. I think he was injured in December, and he wasn't. He hasn't played since. But we are really, really missing him in the midfield. And once you face a player's absence like that, you really start to notice how influential they are onto the side. And John McGinn is absolutely one of those players.
Yeah, you've got these players who you don't realise are foundational to the team, as I say, and then you lose them and you're missing a massive goal, like a hole in your team. I forgot to say, my formation is a 4-5-1. So I've got 5 in my midfield.
Ooh.
Starting with Matic Vidra when he was at Derby on the left wing, just because he could he's one of those players who you know the classic, you set up really defensively in the Championship, but you have one player who just does everything, and he was one of those. If he has decent players around him, he can do a hell of a lot. Secondly, I've got two wingers, a cam, and 2 centre mids. My 2 centre mids, Charlie Adam. When he was at Blackpool and they got promoted, I watched that. For some reason, my dad got the Sky Sports for a month, and it was when they had their 3 games in their playoff run, when they got promoted. And I absolutely loved Charlie Adam. Was magnificent. I still think he's a very good player, a very interesting player, because he doesn't look like a footballer, but he's actually very, very technically superb. Next up,
he's quite old as well. He's in his mid-30s, isn't he, Charlie Adam?
He's been old since I remember him. Since Blackpool went up. Blackpool went up about.
He's always been old.
Yeah, he really has. He's one of those players who you always assume's really old. But maybe he wasn't at some stage. I don't know. Next up, I've got Ruben Neves, who was just, for Wolves, was absolutely sublime. And he still is. He's an absolutely great player. And he's just got a boot on him that you just want to watch matches for. Other wing, Adama Traore. I don't need to go on about it anymore, other than he's the best player to ever live. And he's going to win the Ballon d'Or in 2027. I've called it.
Is he now?
My final Middlesbrough player is Gaston Ramirez. He's the best player I've seen at the Borough because he just gelled the whole team. He's what we always miss. We miss that attacking presence in the midfield. We've had very good wingers in the past. We've had Downing, who's done a lot. We had Victor Fisher back for a season. But we've never had that midfielder who can just gel a team and do a lot for us. And he was that. Doma as well. That was a brilliant winger we had. He just gels the team and he's just phenomenal on the ball. And you can give him the ball and you feel calm that he's not going to lose it, that he's going to do something, he's going to make a difference. So yeah, that's my midfield. Who are your 3 up front, Sam?
Yeah, so 3 up front. I tell you what, I was very, very tempted to almost put Adama Traore in this team, but I thought I may as well keep it consistently last season Championship, just as because if I were to do that, then a lot of these players would be Wolves players.
Yeah.
But on the left wing, I've put Jared Bowen, who is now obviously at West Ham.
Yeah.
I remember being terrified of him whenever we played Hull in the Championship, but it was only Bowen I was terrified of. I was not really that terrified of Hull because he's one of those players that, he makes the team, if that makes sense. He had, I think it was 22 goals last season. He assisted quite a few more as well. And Hull would have been nowhere without him, really. And I think that's kind of epitomised in their poor run of results after he left for West Ham too.
Yeah.
He's just he's fantastic on the ball. He's versatile as well. He can play on the wing or in midfield, and he links up very well with the players around him as well.
Do you remember
no matter what position he's in?
Do you remember Berg for Hull? You might not.
Yes, no, I do, yeah.
He was pretty good as well. I can't remember anything more on that.
It's funny because Hull do have these individual players who come out and they are quite good, but then they end up going on to better things, which is fair enough. But yeah, I know what you mean. The other one I've gone for forward striker has to be Pukki. Teemu Pukki set the league on fire last season. I think he ended up getting somewhere close to 30 goals. But I think the more amazing thing about Pukki was just where he came from. He was a free transfer.
Yeah. Oh, hang on, Sam. I think I've lost you.
Oh
yeah, no, got you back. Lovely stuff. Carry on.
There we go. Yeah, he came in for free for the Sparkers side, and he ended up being one of the most prolific strikers in the Championship. He links up amazingly with his attacking midfield, and he thrives whenever an opportunity is presented to him. He's, a lot of people might call him like a tap-in merchant. I don't think he is at all. I think he's a very skillful player, and I think you can't overlook his influence in that Norwich side in getting them promoted. There's a reason why everyone calls for a Pukki party when he's on the field, and that's because he is a fantastic player. So that's why he's in my striker role.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the right wing, I've gone with Syed Benrahma from Brentford, who I think is absolutely phenomenal on the ball. He's very, very skillful on the wing, and he can just do some amazing things. This might be more of a bias towards this season because I have been watching Brentford this season quite big. So it just happened to be on the telly. Whenever I turn the telly on to watch some Championship football, always Brentford. But Benrahma is really, really good on that wing. He's a very creative player. He's fast and he's absolutely lethal when he's in front of goal. And he's one of those players who, like Jared Bowen was this season, I have full confidence that Benrahma will go on to a Premier League team or a higher side at the end of this season. Because if Brentford don't get promoted, I think he absolutely deserves to have that chance at the top level.
Yeah.
So that's my team. I've got Bowen, Pukki, and Benrahma up front.
Just before I say my final one, do you want to quickly run through the whole team straight through?
Oh yes, of course. So 4-3-3. In goal, I've got Darren Randolph from Middlesbrough. Left back, I've got Enter Stevens from Sheffield United. My captain and centre back, Tyrone Mings. Centre back, Jack O'Connell. Right back, Max Aarons. In my centre mid, I've got Pablo Hernandez from Leeds, Grealish from Villa, John McGinn from Villa, and then on my attacking front, I've got Bowen on the left wing, Teemu Pukki on the striker position, and then Benrahma on the right wing.
Phenomenal. I've just got the one striker, and it was very difficult, so I'm just going to give a couple of shout-outs, if I may do so. Firstly, Niels Mopai. I might be saying it wrong.
I was debating Mopai.
Absolute stellar striker. Pukki as well. No, that's it. Lolly from Nottingham Forest was another one who he scores every time he plays us. He's a really good player. And
he's phenomenal. He is, and he's versatile as well. He can play anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to fit him in, but I couldn't quite put him over any of the others that I've got in. But my striker is Troy Deeney, who is just like, as a lone striker, you don't mess with him. He's one of those players like Mitrovic who you're not going to have a fight with, are you? I'd love to see those two come against each other. Actually,
Troy Deeney is he's a Blues fan. He's a Blues fan. He's Blues, but I have a lot of time for him. I rate Troy Deeney because I think he's a very good player, but also I think he's someone who, when you're talking about the rivalry between Villa and Blues, he's someone who gives it, but he takes it as well, and he's very, very happy to do that. I think he's a genuinely very down to earth person, and even though he's a blue nose, I hate him for that. I think he's a brilliant player, and I really do respect him. I think he's great. He's
just been at the top of his game for so long. But my team altogether, very quickly. So I've gone for a 4-5-1. Darren Randolph in goal from the 2018 season, especially. Ryan Sessegnon and Joe Bryan at wing backs. John Terry Gibson in the centre. On the wings, I've got Adama Traore and Matic Vidra when he was at Derby. Ruben Neves and Charlie Adam in the middle when Charlie Adam was at Blackpool and Ruben Neves was at Wolves, he still is. And Gaston Ramirez is my cam, playing just behind the immortal Troy Deeney. Sam, we are running a little bit out of time, but I've got 4 quick fire questions for you. And please do feel free to explain them if you'd like. So the 4 questions are as follows. Firstly, Who is the best manager you think in the Championship? And it can be like for a one season, or it can be over a considerable number of years, like a really classic Championship manager maybe. Who is your favourite player? And try and go for a home and away if you can. Best Championship player of all time, and by that I mean like represents the Championship. Troy Deeney's like a classic, do you know what I mean? Like classic Championship players.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah. Okay.
And finally, if you want, you don't have to, but a player who's gotten a bit under your skin. So yeah, hit me with those quickfire answers, Sam.
Alright, so first is manager, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, for manager, I'd have to go with Chris Wilder.
Yeah.
For his Sheffield United side. I think he's a boyhood fan. He's a really, really funny person as well. Like, you listen to him and he knows so much about football too. So he's very insightful. He sets his side up well. He plays really positive and attractive football. And he just resonates with the fans as well. And really, as if you were a Sheffield United fan right now, seeing your team be promoted from the Championship, now pushing for European football, playing very consistently well, you'd be in absolute heaven.
Yeah.
So I think Chris Wilder, for his influence on that side and just for the things he's done, is definitely one of the best Championship managers.
Yeah.
Second question.
Go for the player that got under your skin, so we can finish on a positive note.
I see. Okay. Player that got under my skin, Patrick Bamford, who was a former Middlesbrough player. I cannot stand the lad. I think he is entitled. I think he's whiny. I don't even think he's that good in front of goal. But the one thing that I always think of, the reason why he gets under my skin, is because of the incident between Leeds and Villa last season, where, but to cut a long story short, basically they scored a goal that was quite deceitful because they implied that they were going to kick the ball out. And then they ended up running through our defence and then scoring when no one was prepared for it because we thought they were going to kick the ball out. But basically, in the ensuing confusion that happened afterwards, because it took about like 5 minutes to sort out, but in the ensuing confusion, he just fell on the floor and implied that our player El Ghazi had decked him around the face, and that's why he was on the floor. And then El Ghazi got a red card for it, which meant that he was going to miss playoff games. And Bamford I think he got a yellow, but footage afterwards, because we appealed the red card, footage afterwards revealed that El Ghazi didn't do anything. So Bamford didn't get any kind of repercussion for it. El Ghazi thankfully got the red card rescinded, but I've hated him ever since. I don't even think he's that good a player, and every time I see him and he just messes up, I just go, ha.
Next up, favourite player. And then finish on best Championship player of all time.
Yeah, favourite player. I mean, it's got to be Jack Grealish. I've spoken about him for years and years. I could fill an entire podcast on my love for Jack Grealish and his fives, but he is a fantastic player, brilliant influence on the side, and he is the talisman for a Villa side. Like I was just saying that. Who was I just talking about? Chris Wilder. Like I was saying that he has such a positive impact on the team because of where he comes from, how he talks about it, and the things he offers to it. Jack Grealish is very, very similar in that respect as well to the Villa side. And then the last one is like the Championship player.
Yeah, what you think is the best Championship player of all time? Right,
so I had a few honourable mentions.
Yeah.
Being Knockhart, Andre Gray, Burnley, and Ross McCormack as well, because Ross McCormack, he fell out of favour at Villa, but he has been playing in the Championship for like the best part of a decade. I mean, he doesn't now, but he had been, because he was at Cardiff, he was at Leeds, he was at Fulham. He was a really good goal scorer. It's a shame he didn't work out for him at Villa. But for me, while I've been watching the Championship, the player that I always just associate with it, and this is another player who's gotten under my skin, is Dwight Gale.
Yeah.
He was there for Newcastle, he was there for West Brom. He just always seems to be at Championship level because he isn't good enough for the Premier League, but he can score goals in the Championship. And he struggles with injury as well, so he's never really cemented himself as like a top striker.
Yeah.
But he's pacey. He gets on my tits because he challenges a lot, and they're quite offensive challenges as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm thinking of the Championship, I think of Dwight Gale quite a lot. That sounded quite like longing. I don't think of Dwight Gale, but like he's there.
You're sat in isolation just dreaming of Dwight Gale. Aren't we all?
Dwight.
Very good answers. I'm similar. I'll start with best manager, and I'm also going to go for I've completely forgotten his name. Rowett?
Chris Wilder.
Chris Wilder, my God.
Oh, Rowett's another one.
No, it's definitely not Rowett. Chris Wilder, and I'll tell you why. I love managers who are a club, and he is Sheffield United. He's built it up from the ground up, and I love that because he's so ingrained into what the club is. And I hate clubs that just get through managers all the time, like Borough, to be fair. I like them to have a real settled foundation, and it's something to cling on to. Even if your club's not doing great, you've got that foundation to build on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like Villa as well, because Villa had a massive roundabout of managers. Like, last decade was really, really, flipping with our manager. We found someone now in Dean Smith who is a Villa fan. He lives and breathes the club, and even though we're not getting the best results right now, I still believe in his ability to push the team forward and to keep playing positive football, because I've seen it and I know that we can do it. We just need the right circumstances as well. So I know what you mean there, definitely,
yeah. Next up, player who got on my skin. I'm so glad you said Bamford for 2 reasons, and that's because of my 2 answers. The first one is Jack Grealish. I'm sorry.
Aww.
I'm sorry. It might be because I'm jealous of his skill, but there's something about that boy. I see him on the field and I just go, grr. He just, he irks me. And then my other one is a Leeds player. So it worked out perfectly. So you said a Borough and a Leeds player. I said a Villa and a Leeds player. Alioski, arrogant little...
No, I don't like him either.
He's just...
There are quite a few in that Leeds side.
Janssen, Pontus Janssen I hate. Yeah. Maybe if they played for another club I wouldn't hate them as much. But, but they're doing very well. Good for them. End of story. Next up is favourite player, and my favourite player is Adam Reach, because
That's fair.
He was at Borough, but he's not known for being a Borough player. He wasn't amazing for us, but he's really found his own at Sheff Wednesday, and he's one of those players who is like the club and captain. He really is everything about the club, and and he's a superb player, to be fair. He's doing really well, and they're such a championship team as well, that I think for my favourite player, I really want it to be from like a real like a team that is set in the championship, and that is Sheffield Wednesday. They're a team you can always rely on to have a Tuesday fixture with. Finally, or a Wednesday. My best championship player of all time, I'll give a couple of honourable mentions: Troy Deeney and Chris Martin. Chris Martin makes me laugh, of Derby.
Definitely.
But mine's Knockhart. You did mention him. Every time I watch the playoff finals, and it doesn't matter who's playing, Knockhart is playing.
Yeah, there he is, isn't he?
He's always there.
Always somewhere.
He missed the very famous penalty against Watford. Do you know the one I mean? Where he missed the penalty, and then Troy Deeney went up and scored at the other end, which is like one of the greatest championship games of all time.
And that's the thing, like, the championship can just give you games like that, whereas a neutral, you can just be completely invested in what's happening, because it can change at the flip of a coin.
Yeah.
That is one of my favourite moments in the championship, is that Deeney goal, because it is just, you're going to react in some way, aren't you? Because it's so amazing. It's
just brilliant, and what I love about the like another game that I've got is Leeds versus Birmingham. So, annoyingly, Sky they put 6 games on the red button. They hadn't put the Borough game on. We beat West Brom 2-0 when West Brom were undefeated, and we were in a really bad place. It was an amazing game. Ashley Fletcher scored from basically the halfway line, but we listened on the radio. But meanwhile, on the screen, every time we looked, there was a goal. It was 5-4 Leeds. It was absolutely mental.
I remember that game because I just remember seeing it, and Blues were losing at one point, and I just had my phone out, and I just turned to my girlfriend Becky, and I was like, Blues are losing, and I just put it away. And then I got it out again, like maybe half an hour later, and it was like 5-4, and I was like, Christ, what have I missed? What game?
It was, honestly, it's such a great game to watch. And on that note, sadly, we're going to conclude on Leeds winning a game. But I just want to say a huge thank you, Sam. It's been such fun having you on. I bloody love the championship. I bloody love talking to you, even though you are a Villa fan. But
it's been fantastic, mate. Thank you so much for having me. I love the fact that this podcast exists. It's so nice to be able to have creative outlets to keep you occupied during these times. So thank you very much for having me on, and thank you for indulging my love of the championship as well.
Oh, don't you stop at you. No, thank you as well, Sam. And as Sam said, it can be a bit shitty isolation, so make sure that you give someone a FaceTime. If you haven't spoken in oh my God, I'll start that one again. There's no editing that goes into this, so this is all going straight on YouTube. Make sure you FaceTime that person you haven't spoken to in a long time and have a nice long natter. Thank you so much to Sam, and thank you for listening. Goodbye and God bless.